Well, the ANC Youth League National Conference held this weekend has concluded with a new leadership structure. Collen Malatji was elected president, Phumzile Mgcina as his deputy, with Mntuwoxolo Ngudle as secretary-general. Tsakani, Shiviti and Olga Seate are the first and second deputy secretaries-general. Zwelo Masilela will act as the Youth League's treasurer-general. Now, the conference comes after the disbandment of the structure back in 2013. Let's take a look at the importance of the structure and its relevance to the party going forward. We're joined by political science lecturer at the University of Western Cape, Dr. Fikile Vilakazi. Dr. Vilakazi, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on the Weekend Report. This is a structure, the Youth League, one that has had interim leaders in place for the last 8 years or so. And so for close to a decade now, we've got young members of the ANC having not experienced what it really feels like to form part of the ANC Youth League and to be a formidable sort of young lions cohort in the organization. How significant is this past weekend for that structure?
Morning, Ntokozo, and to viewers at home. This is a very, very significant moment for the youth of the African National Congress, mainly because politically, as South Africa, we are in a defining moment, particularly for the ruling party, where leadership has been challenging. Issues of corruption have really stifled the power of the ANC on the public domain. So the Youth League as an organization that is seen as the future political leadership within the ANC, but also within South Africa, this moment is key, especially because they've been disbanded, for the last 8 years in Ntokozo. And we would know that since the departure of Julius Malema, since he was expelled, who was a member of the Youth League, a leader of the Youth League then, things have really changed within the structure of the ANC Youth League. Their power, their voice, their representation, their push, like it was known, in the days of Julius Malema, in the days of Peter Mokaba, in the days of Fikile Vilakazi and so on, had dwindled a lot. You started to see in the last 8 to 10 years a youth league that had no voice, a youth league that had no power to be able to push directions within the organization. So this election is a defining moment for the ANC Youth League in a sense that this is a cadre that is inheriting also a particular type of an ANC. They are no longer inheriting a liberation, a giant that has taken South Africa, beyond apartheid, but they're inheriting a corrupted ANC in terms of the eyes of the public, given the allegations that have been leveled against a number of leaders of the ANC. So they have a challenge to clean up the character of the organization. They have a challenge to bring South Africa into confidence, a huge responsibility. They also have a challenge to really be imaginative. They have to center into their imagination a lot to think about what time is it for the African National Congress in South Africa today? What is the mission of the ANC of today compared to that of yesterday? Clearly things have changed, and I think it is this Youth League that will then have to chant that way forward, redefine the ANC, redirect the ANC in the eyes of the public, but also within the political sphere. And it may be that Ntokozo and viewers at home, this Youth League would need to lead the ANC into a position of the opposition, because that is where the ANC is going to go probably in the next 10 to 20 years in our reading of the political sphere. And it is then this Youth League that will have to be a strong opposition voice within coalitions. This is the structure that will have to play a pivotal role in terms of positioning the ANC within the politics of coalitions, something that is new in the African National Congress itself, but also something that is new in the political sphere of South Africa. We can see how our coalitions are struggling, right, in terms of power sharing. And this cadre of young people that are rising will have to deal with those things. How do we do power share? How do we decentralize? Because the ANC has been, in terms of ideologically, it has aligned itself a lot around the centralization of power. And now this emerging leadership is facing an ideological question a thinking question that says, how do we then define ANC as a decentralized power machine that is able to share power with other political parties, because the coalitions are calling for that. So if they have to then occupy a particular leadership position that is strong in this phase that we are in now, transitioning into a different level of our democracy as South Africa, maturing democracy, they will have to then realize that that level of maturity of our democracy requires a certain level of maturity in terms of political leadership. And
right.
that, for me, I think many of us is being able to share power and to redefine the moments.
Well, it's quite the tall order that you've just elucidated for us, Dr. Vilakazi, and quite the task that lies ahead for this young cohort. Talking about the ideological questions that they're likely to have to answer as the mother body embarks or continues to embark on its own renewal project, and as a newly sort of elected structure, they have the task of carving out what that will look like for their structure. You know, the slate that won, unopposed, was a slate that was termed economic freedom or death. And I want to talk about that rhetoric and whether or not it will find accommodation, whether or not it will find a home in the ANC mother body that has before expelled its youth leaders who, in their eyes, felt did not toe the party line.
The question of the rhetoric about radical economic transformation within the ANC is one that is tainted, right, in terms of the leadership that is now the elders of the ANC. Because the cohort of the ANC or the faction that has been talking about radical economic transformation is the one that is in the Zondo Commission report in terms of majority. Now, this cohort of young people that are being elected who are chanting the same song of radical economic transformation will then have to show the country to say, if you are talking about radical economic transformation, how are you actually injecting the politics of ethics? Because the issue of radical economic transformation in itself as an ideological and a practical solution for South Africa is urgent. So that is not the question, right? The question is, once you have access to the fiscus, once you have access to the tax base of the nation, which is the purse of the country, how ethical can you be to redirect those resources towards the realization of changing the material conditions of the people of South Africa? Because that accessibility is not for yourself as the ANC. So they'll have to remember Newzroom Afrika, who actually has said to the ANC, remember, comrades, this is not your struggle. This is not your liberation. When you rise, you must rise with the people. Remember, this is not for yourselves, but it is for South Africans. It is for the people of South Africa. They'll have to remember that. They'll have to invoke the spirit of Newzroom Afrika, practically speaking, and this season of our political time calls for ethical leadership. So when we talk radical economic transformation, really this new leadership of the Youth League will have to demonstrate how do you move away, first of all, from the Zondo Commission report, because they are not going to be let loose of that. Even if there are younger people inheriting from the old leadership, they will have to answer questions of the Zondo Commission report. Many of those issues have not been dealt with. So if they become the leadership of the future, they will have to first clean up, and that task is urgent. So that's the one thing. The second question is that of feminist leadership in Ntokozo, and gender inclusion, diversity in general, right? I think we must applaud the Youth League. They've done something that the elders of the ANC have failed to do over a century, bringing in a deputy president that is a woman. We have been saying to the ANC, feminist leadership is important. The manner in which our elders in the ANC have treated women in the ANC is putrid. Right? It's horrible. And we're saying this with due respect, because they instead have generated something that we're reading as political violence towards women's bodies. But this leadership that has just emerged yesterday is showing us that it is possible. And I think it's a turning point. So they will have to deal with those questions, which are actually in the constitution of the ANC, to say we are a non-sexist organization, we send our women in our leadership, we send our feminist leadership. And in the deputy presidency of the Youth League, the ANC will then have to continue that culture and not tokenize women leaders, right? Not tokenize political leadership that are in the bodies of people who identify as women, but genuinely support women because women are capable, because women are able to contribute towards the leadership of South Africa. And I'm hoping that this is something that probably the Youth League is going to do. So those are some of the things that I would point out in Ntokozo and viewers at home.
Right. Well, very quickly, Dr. Vilakazi, because we have run out of time, just on the focus areas for this youth leadership. I mean, they have been called upon to focus on youth matters. And it makes complete sense, of course. We have an increasingly apathetic youth cohort in this country that is becoming increasingly disinterested in participating or in any sort of active citizenry. And so the concern that I have is a youth leadership structure within the ANC being co-opted to start trying to work through the mother body issues that are plaguing the African National Congress. And we've seen it happen historically before, where as a structure they've lost focus on the demographic that they are supposed to be targeting and have instead been co-opted for factional means within the African National Congress. How important is it that they do not get sidetracked as we cast our eyes towards those 2024 elections?
Very, very key that they do that. And I would say, in fact, the mandate that they'll need to take up immediately is to reorganize universities and reorganize schools and reorganize young people within society. Within the pavements of South Africa, the strata that is largely unemployed. Get those young people back into political education. And political education does not need you to be in formal schooling in terms of being in a classroom or being in a university. The ANC used to do political education in the public halls of our communities. Let them go back there. So the Youth League has got to focus on that and not be dragged into the dirty linen of the elders, right? Of course, they need to contribute towards that. But the mission that they're being called into now is to saying, go back to the eye of the needle. The ANC has failed dismally on the eye of the needle, which is their policy. Let the Youth League take that eye of the needle and look at it, because that policy document is really vibrant if it is really practicalized. Let them go to society, galvanize young people, universities and TVET colleges, in schools and in pavements, in terms of just really bringing back that ideological vibe to say, what do we stand for as South Africa? Being able to read the economic conditions of our country, issues of service delivery, get the young people to be the change. And that's something that I think the Youth League has got the responsibility to do, and not be dragged into everything that is happening in the ANC. They have a mission to rise and lead this country as the leadership of the future, and I think they must focus their energy on that. All right. Well, Dr. Vilakazi, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us on the Weekend Report this morning.